Okay. This is the elusive quest. The elusive quest for the perfect webinar. So it's really funny how all this stuff works. Pearl's going to log back in. In the meantime, I'm just going to go off of the slide deck. But here's the good news. I have a copy of this available for you guys, which I'm going to give you at the end of this presentation. There's a web page that I set up for it. So just real quick, the background here that I want to tell you about is, student loans are at $1.3 trillion. Defaults are on the rise. Only 39% of kids graduate in 4 years. Half of kids are underemployed. 50% of kids are underemployed, meaning they don't have jobs that require a college degree. Along the same lines, there's a whole lot of mistakes on the financial aid forms. 94% of FAFSAs have errors. I think the stat is a little outdated, just to be fair, because they used to go in by paper, but still there's a very high number that is incorrect. So most aid goes to families in the top quartile of income, though, which should be comforting if you think you're not going to qualify for anything. The average discount is 46.3%, and there's more merit aid than ever. In terms of what I wanted to share with you just about our background today, for those of you who don't know, the reason that I sort of got into this business, or it found me, I guess, so to speak, is that I had a really bad, rough experience with student loans. My dad was self-employed. He did, really had nothing to, no real forethought in terms of how to fill out the financial aid forms. It was a big mess. I remember he had papers like all over the place. When he was filling out the forms. I went to Wesleyan, which was at the time the 4th most expensive college in the country. It was kind of nuts. So his attitude to me was always, hey, don't worry, it'll work out. But you know what? It didn't work out. I had more than $100,000 in debt, and it caused me to, have all sorts of credit issues, you name it. So I'm just going to, one more time, just going to tell people, if you don't see or hear, you have to refresh browser if you can't see or hear. Okay. So let's get into the biggest mistakes so that you don't have these issues. The first mistake is blowing priority deadlines. That is far and away one of the easiest things, one of the most, easy things to overlook in the financial aid process. And the reason for that is because so many families, and not just the kids, but the moms and dads are, actually, maybe I can just hold this up. Blowing priority deadlines. Look at this high-tech presentation. So yeah, it's very hard to find the priority deadlines to file financial aid. And I do a lot of live presentations, and a lot of times people rush home afterward only to find out that they missed a priority deadline. And the issue is that, a lot of the money is given out first come, first served. So that's really a problem if you miss a priority deadline. Now, most priority deadlines are at, different points of the year. If you're applying early action, early decision to a school, you might have a November 1 or November 15th or December 1st deadline. Now, the problem that a lot of people encounter is that they look at the FAFSA itself, and it says, and there's probably no way I can show this, but let me see if I can hold this up here. The FAFSA says to submit your application no later than June 30th. And the reason that's nuts is because most priority deadlines are way before that. So you don't pay attention to what the deadline reads on the FAFSA. You should always look at the individual school's deadline. That varies. So some schools might have a February 1st deadline or March 1st deadline and so forth. Don't go only by the FAFSA. Likewise, don't wait until you filed your tax returns, because most people don't file their returns till April. And if you have a February 1st deadline, you're going to be out of luck. All right. I have another slide here. This is the equivalent of having one of those overhead projectors, with transparencies. So this shows the deadlines for Syracuse University. The CSS profile is due December 1st, and that's my point. You're never going to have a June deadline. Always look earlier. Okay. Mistake number 2. Failure to submit. This is like making you nauseous. Failure to submit all required forms. Sometimes, if you're a conspiracy theorist like us, you might think that these colleges don't level with you in terms of how what it takes to get money from them, right? So some schools take only one form called the FAFSA. That's the free application, the free application for federal student aid. However, there are about 260, 270 colleges that take an additional form called the CSS profile. And that is, that's a whole nother form that's required in addition to, not in lieu of, but in addition to the FAFSA. So again, you have to go school by school, just like the priority deadlines, to figure out which forms your school requires. And it's very easy to overlook because, frankly, I think these colleges sometimes bury that information on their, on their website somewhere. So that's a big mistake. If you don't fill out the forms correctly, you might find out that you're not eligible for any type of aid. All right, mistake number 3. This is a big one too. Messing up parent versus kid. And what I mean by that is parent stuff versus kid stuff. Now, this is going, I'm just shuddering at how I wanted to, I'm going to possibly try to pull this off. I have these, I'm just going to have to read this to you, but I have these impossibly small definitions on the FAFSA. Actually, you can see that. I can look at that too. What investments include and what investments do not include. And so I'm just going to highlight some of those because those are important. And also the over here, number 4, business value. I had a couple of questions that came in ahead of time about how to value a business. Or someone actually asked me, I think he was a lawyer, he asked me, well, what's the, I understand the business value is 0, what's the authority for that? Because I guess I'm not, enough of an authority. I'm great at presentations though. So let me just tell you what counts as an investment and what doesn't. And the reason this is important is that if you're filling out a FAFSA and it asks you what's the value of your investments, and then you indicate something that should not be included, then you're going to be shooting yourself in the foot by eliminating some eligibility that you should have had. So you don't want to tell them stuff they don't need to know. So what are investments? Real estate is actually an investment, but not your primary residence. That's different. So anything you own that you don't live in as a primary residence counts as an investment. So does cash. Sometimes people say, hey, can I, stick money in the, can I stick money in my mattress? You can do whatever you want, but on the forms ask about cash. So whether you think they're going to find it or not has nothing to do with whether you're filling out the forms correctly. In fact, these are federal forms. The penalties for filling them out incorrectly are pretty severe. So I wouldn't recommend lying on these forms. Never one of my big tips. What else is included? Regular investments. Also, here I got questions. Actually, today I got a question about this. What about trust funds? They are included. Those count as investments. So do stocks and bonds and mutual funds, all those types of things. So basically, anything you have except, so far, your primary residence, that doesn't count as an asset on the FAFSA, or insurance, or annuities, or retirement assets. And that means 401k, KEO, pensions, 403b, 457, you name it. Those are excluded on the FAFSA. So if you include those by accident, which many people do, we had a client who was the CEO of a financial services firm who over-included his retirement account. I think he lost about $11,000 or $12,000 from Ithaca College because he made this mistake before he turned to us to do the forms for him. Okay, so those are the things that are not included. They are exempt assets. So many of you might be thinking, well, interesting, what if I were to put some of my money into one of those exempt assets? Because that's the type of thing that we do on the in our office all the time as financial aid consultants. The answer is that there's no look back period. The forms have to be accurate as of the date that they're filed. So you can do last minute things, but to be fair, to round out the discussion, what you have to be wary of is that you might have to, if you're doing something that's going to throw off an income trail on your tax return, meaning that maybe you took money that was giving you interest, or you sold something that had capital gains. If that shows up on your tax return, I would say 4 out of 10 financial aid offices will look at that and ask you about it. So not every financial aid office will grill you on that. Your best bet is to do this before the year of the tax return that they're going to look at. So as a side note, I don't want to get too off track here, but as a side note, for class of 2017 kids, the 2 tax years, not one, but the 2 tax years that the FAFSA is going to require are 2016 as well as 2015. So for those of you who have class of 2016 kids or younger, there was only 1 base year, but going forward for class of 2017 and beyond, it's 2 years. Okay. Now, let me just get to the business value thing. So again, this is a question that I got that were submitted ahead of time. We had more than 400 people register. So business value does not include the value of a small business, and I'm paraphrasing, if you have 100 or fewer employees. So most businesses have a 0 value. We've been telling this story a lot lately. Pearl and I have a client. Her name is Tina. She lives in Glen Head, Long Island, where we live. And her story was that she had valued her business for colleges like NYU and Syracuse and all that based on a real world valuation. She used financial statements that her accountant had helped her prepare because she's a contractor and she's got all these disclosures she's got to make to banks and that type of thing. Well, what ended up happening, sadly, was that NYU and so forth gave her 0 across the board. I came in and looked at what she had filed because she felt like she had made a mistake, and that was the mistake she made. She overvalued her business because she used a real world as opposed to financial aid valuation. So we ended up resubmitting the forms, and she went from 0 to $25,000 from NYU, and she got nice awards from some of the other schools too. So that's the importance of understanding how to value your business. Are you guys finding this helpful? I know we're sort of getting a little, there's a little bit of a rough start here, but I think the comments about the echo have died down a little bit. We only have 1 presentation going right now, so there really shouldn't be any echo, but it's Google Hangouts, you never know. Pearl, are you logging back in? Pearl, you still out there? Can you log in? You don't see the email from me? No. Let me resend that email to Pearl. All right, so just bear with me when I'm sending you another email. I love you. So funny. All right, so Pearl, I think, will be joining us at least in chat. All right, now, Bill's sad there's no Pearl, but Amy says helpful. Josette can hear me. Barbara says helpful. Lisa says helpful. Jeff says helpful. Raj says yep. Okay, good. I mean, because I always say, I may not be the greatest at presentations, but I think the content's important. So let's just fire away, plug away here. And I'm going to have to fire my tech guy, which is me. Okay, here's mistake number 4. Disclosing your retirement accounts on the FAFSA. So I just covered that, and I told you that story about our client who had over-disclosed information to Ithaca College, and he cost himself a lot of money, about I think it was about $11,000. It might have been $12,000. This mistake, I'm going to tell you again. Number 5, disclosing the value of your primary residence on the FAFSA. Now, we've been talking about the FAFSA so far. Jack is just asking me a good question about the CSS profile, which ties into this mistake, because the CSS profile does ask about the value of your primary residence. In fact, since your child is supposed to be filling out the CSS profile, your child's supposed to answer questions like, how much is your parents' house worth? What did they pay for the house? What year did they buy it? What's the mortgage balance? So on and so forth. Oh, Pearl, I see you. I can see Pearl. Okay. Pearl's back in the house. All right, good. So on the CSS profile, you do have to talk about your primary residence, but you want to try to lowball the value of your house. Pearl, are you back with us? Can you hear me? Pearl, you back? All right. You want to plug in a microphone, maybe? Plug in some earphones, or are you using? I can hear you a little bit. Are you on the other computer? Okay, good. So I wanted Pearl to weigh in on this question, which is, Pearl, are you able to talk about how you try to come up with a value for the primary residence? And I know we're not supposed to use, a lot of people ask me this, I know this answer, you're not supposed to use the assessed value. Whoa, I'm getting nauseous. This is like, it's like those old Star Trek episodes when they crash on the bridge and they're obviously just jumping around like that. So can you, so you're not supposed to use the assessed value of your primary residence because that's what the county sends around, and that's not supposed to be the fair market value of your house. But Pearl does something else where she tries to lowball the value of the house. Pearl, you done fidgeting around there? Wait, they can't hear you. Are you on mute? See if you're on mute there. So what Pearl was just saying, I can actually interpret for her. So number one, Pearl was saying she uses something called the Federal Housing Index Multiplier. I saw a comment in there to use the assessed value. You can't use the assessed value. That's actually in the rules. Colleges will not use that at all. Instead, what they'll do is just toss it out. They use their own valuation. So the thing that Pearl does is she searches something called the Federal Housing Index Multiplier. I'll say it again a little more slowly. Federal Housing Index Multiplier. And what that is I think it's a Department of Commerce methodology. She would correct me if she weren't mute. And what that does is it averages in the national rate of appreciation. So depending on what part of the country you live, we have a lot of people here in New York, but we also have people in other parts of the country on this presentation. It may actually help you if you live in an area where it's rapidly appreciated in value versus, and you've owned your house for a long time. Pearl, how are you doing on your audio settings? I can't hear you. Yeah, but you checked your audio settings on the top of the screen and all that? Yeah, your input, all the settings in Google. Bring me the laptop for a second. Okay, I'll do it on the fly. All right, so here's the next mistake, which is disclosing the value of your life insurance and annuities. So the thing is that on the CSS profile, it's a little bit different than the FAFSA. Let's do this. Default microphone. Put in your headphones. Do you have headphones? All right. This. All right, put in the headphones. That should work. Okay, so close the door. Thank you. She's psyched. She loves when we do these things. So here's the deal. On the FAFSA, it's different than the CSS profile. Life insurance is exempt across the board, but I mean life insurance with cash value, not term insurance. So if you buy a policy and you have cash in there, that is exempt. Now, if you are filling out the CSS profile, you're fine with life insurance, but where it's different is that the FAFSA exempts annuities and the CSS profile only exempts what they call retirement annuities. meaning I'm not sure what a retirement annuity is. I think the argument could be that they are considered qualified, meaning, ooh, Pearl, I hear you. Pearl, talk.
Hello.
That's a little better.
Hello, Cyber World. Can you hear me?
Pearl, I can hear you.
Great.
You guys,
Can
if you guys can
anybody
hear
else
Pearl,
hear
say
me?
yes, I can hear Pearl in chat. Okay. So we're just talking about the difference between annuities and what's on the FAFSA versus how annuities are discussed. Whoa, what are you doing? Annuities that are discussed on the CSS profile. And I don't know, do you know the definition of what a retirement annuity is? Pearl? They can hear you. Good. You know how the profile asks for retirement annuities?
You guys can hear me. I can't hear any of you or you, Andy. So,
all right. So I'm going to move along.
but I can understand what you're talking about.
Yeah. Why don't you just sit right outside the door here so you can hear me talk? Pearl, sit right outside the door here. I was going to ask about what's the definition of a retirement annuity?
You're asking me what the definition of a retirement annuity or whether it's included?
Yeah, on the CSS profile, it says you have to include non-retirement annuities, or I can't remember what it says.
Unless I read your lips, I'm sorry, I'm having audio. If you have a non-retirement annuity, it's going to count against you. If you have a retirement annuity, it is not going to count against you in the FAFSA forms. I am not really sure what you're...
So, anyway, it's one of these things where it's very hard to define, and we get hung up on it sometimes. But on one hand, you wouldn't buy an annuity unless it was for retirement, right? But on the other hand, I think the strict definition as a non-licensed financial person, so take this with a grain of salt, is that a retirement annuity is something that is qualified under the IRS code. So anyway, Pearl is loving life right now. And who would blame her? All right, here is mistake number 7, failure to be strategic. So what I mean by that is that, again, some stuff counts against you more than others. Some stuff doesn't count against you at all. And if you have money saved in the wrong buckets, and so far we've been talking about just parent assets, but let me tell you about a bucket that's even worse. Those are child assets. So parent assets will penalize you a certain percentage. It's not 100% of the money. There's this concept called estimated family contribution in the financial aid forms that has to do with your income, your savings, and so on and so forth. The more you have, the more you're penalized. The higher your EFC means the less you're eligible. So you want to have a lower EFC. And that formula that factors in your EFC includes, not just your income, but also your savings, and not just your savings, but where you have saved that money. So if you've saved money in the wrong places, like your child's name compared to a parent's name, you're going to be penalized very, very severely. That's the real issue. Pearl, you back and comfy?
I'm back.
All right, and I can hear you great, and can you hear me?
Yes.
All right, you're getting a lot of sympathy.
Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, Jamie Scott, big fan.
Thanks, Jamie.
Yeah. Jamie, what am I, chopped liver? Seriously?
Yeah.
All right. So, and we can't go through this. We only have about a half hour left, but it may pay to think about moving money out of the wrong places and putting them in the right places. So if you have money in a child's account, I did see some questions about 529s, but so I want to talk about that. But if you have money in UTMA or UJMA or some other type of child account, that's going to penalize you at 20 or 25% of the whole amount, not 100%. Somebody asked me about that also. It's only 20 or 25% depending on the college that they're applying to. That same money if you move it into your own name, penalizes you at only 5.64% of that amount. And if you move that money into some of the exempt assets that we talked about, meaning the insurance products or annuities or whatever, you could pay a 0 penalty. That's what we mean by strategic. Pearl, you have anything to add other than
Absolutely, but of course, along with that evaluation of choosing to move assets from your student's name into your parent name, it really also depends on the penalties that could be incurred as a result of moving those assets. And really, what you need to do is evaluate the cost to make those moves, whether it be because there would be stocks incurred if, for example, if the asset was a student stock asset versus just a straight old money market, the penalties associated are different, and you would weigh the penalty against what the benefit would be in moving the asset to the parent side.
Okay, so let me just rephrase that and sort of plus what she said. Hey Pearl, you're a little don't take this the wrong way. You're a little jiggly out there with the with the laptop. You want to put it on a table or something, or stop dancing around?
I'll stop playing with my feet.
Well, just put it on a table.
Okay.
We have all these tables lying around. Yeah. So all right. So along the lines of what Pearl said while she's fidgeting around like that, she's not a sound sleeper either, by the way. You're going to learn a lot about us. Everything you always want to know about Indian Pearl, but didn't want to ask. So here's the deal. Money in the wrong buckets penalizes you, but you shouldn't just go willy-nilly moving money around to improve your financial aid eligibility, because as Pearl, who's also an attorney, we're both lawyers. I'm a recovering attorney. As she pointed out, you have to look at the negatives, not only the positives of moving money around. You might have penalties, you might have tax implications, and that type of thing. So in the case of 529, which is technically a parent asset on the FAFSA. The FAFSA considers that a parent asset. If you have a 529 and you sell it early, and meaning you're not using it the way it's supposed to be intended, you pay a 10% penalty on the earnings. So if you have earnings, you're going to pay a little bit of a penalty. The reason that you may not, 529 may not be bad for you necessarily is because most colleges consider that a parent asset, so you penalize at only 5% of the amount. So if you have $100,000 in a parent name, in your name, or a 529, for the most part, you lose 5.64% of your eligibility, or $5,640 is the amount that you can contribute out of that $100,000. That's the way the formulas work. However, I know this is complicated. However, if you then if you're applying to a college that treats the 529 as a child asset, meaning instead of being penalized at 5.64%, you're being penalized at 20 or 25%, then that 529 reduces your eligibility by $20,000 or $25,000. So it may make sense if you're applying to a college, and there's a lot of colleges that take the CSS profile that we feel, can't prove it, but we feel still treat the 529 as a child asset. It may pay to move that, but you have to look at the negative consequences. Did I get that right, bro?
Yep.
Okay. So I don't know if you've been watching how cheesy this is, but here's, Pearl, you're going to be impressed by this. Here's the next slide. Did you see me doing this before?
Mistakes with...
Yeah, with PIN. And FSA. So you're the expert on that stuff. Explain what the hell that's all about. We got so many questions
We've gotten many questions.
Are they and when can I get them?
Yes, we have actually received a multitude of questions, not shockingly prompted by the Department of Ed's blast email to anybody with a pulse who is in the college applicant range age, basically saying, people overlook the word may. You may need to, but anyway, here's the deal. Prior to this past financial aid year, not the one we're in, but last year, in order to log into and electronically sign and log into the student loan website, one needed a PIN, a personal identification number. That was true until this past, actually till last spring, at the tail end of last year's financial aid season, and they switched over to what's called the FSA ID system. So the FSA ID system replaced the PIN system altogether. In that 1 year of transition, however, you were able to use your PIN to obtain the FSA ID. The FSA ID generally, I believe, was created to create more computer security systems in place, because this is your personal identification information, identifying information. So now, in order to log in to complete and submit the FAFSA, you need what's called the FSA ID, which is somewhat of an arduous process to obtain, but nonetheless, you need it. The student needs it, as well as the parents need their own FSA IDs, because they electronically sign the FAFSA as well in order to submit it. So that is basically the whole hoopla about the FSA ID, and I believe in the last couple of days, the Department of Education sent out a mass email to any applicant, whether it be this year or kids already enrolled in college, to obtain and to confirm that their FSA ID is in fact working, because if you obtain the FSA ID on the same day that you're hoping and ready to submit your FAFSA, you may not be able to do that, because the FSA ID, once applied for, takes approximately 1 to 3 days to clear it and to confirm it with the Social Security Administration office. But anyway, that's all there is to the FSA ID.
All right, so I was in chat trying to answer some of these questions, but one I couldn't answer, and I'm not sure if you talked about this. How many parents have to get the FSA ID?
One of the two parents need to get the FSA ID, and if there is a divorced parent, then it would be the custodial parent who needs to obtain the FSA ID. Actually, I'll go one step further. If down the road you're thinking of obtaining student loans for your child, then you too will need an FSA ID, regardless of whether you are the custodial or non-custodial parent obtaining that PLUS loan. Just another tidbit.
So Scott's asking a couple of questions about jointly owned assets, with which this is not an FSA thing. This goes back to the previous section. Does it count as a child asset if you have a parent and a child together owning an asset? I'll answer that one.
Okay, I had actually answered it in chat, but okay.
Oh, good. All right. Well, what'd you say?
Well, I think if your parent's name is on it, it's considered a custodial account on behalf of the student, and therefore it's a student asset.
Yeah. Technically, kids can't own anything because they're minors. So the de facto, your parents are going to be involved somehow. So whether it's a custodial or joint account, it's probably not technically a joint account, because you have to be, as far as I know, you have to be, of the age of majority to actually be a joint owner, as opposed to a minor who's typically the custody. What is it? The custodial kid, custodiee? I don't know. All right, let's move along here because we have a lot to cover. Here's the next mistake. How's my manicure? Number 9, failure to sign. This is a big deal, and it has to do with people thinking they're done when they're not done. So in the old days, when people would submit paper FAFSAs, I think a lot of them had plenty of mistakes, including not signing. But what's the equivalent of not signing in the electronic digital age for FAFSAs, Pearl?
Well, unfortunately, it gets kicked back as incomplete as if you left off your Social Security number or any other pertinent vital information. It's considered incomplete. It gets kicked back to the end of the line, and then it will send you an email asking that you update it and fix it. But if that's not something you learn about or get to until weeks after, just keep in mind that that's when your FAFSA entry will be considered submitted. Okay.
So in financial aid, delay means death. So a lot of money is given out first come, first serve. So anything that can result in it getting kicked back, that's what Pro's talking about. You want to avoid all that type of stuff. All right, here's mistake number 10. Wrong year's FAFSA. Let me speak about that, but Pearl, I know you've got a comment that you wrote here. It's very easy to submit the wrong year's FAFSA. I did a presentation in December where I had a gentleman tell me that he just filled out the FAFSA for his child, and I said, no, you couldn't have, because it didn't become available till January. It's not going to be available till January. That's what I told him at the time. So we went back and forth a few times, but this is a very common thing, because they make the FAFSAs available for class of 2016 kids. The FAFSA is available January 1st. For class of 2017 kids, it becomes available October 1st. But they still leave, don't they leave the previous year's versions up there, Pearl?
Sorry, I was answering chat.
Yeah.
Repeat.
Want me to repeat the question, or you got it?
Repeat it, please.
So I was going to take a drink, though. All right. So the do they leave the? It's easy to mess up which year of FAFSA you're filing, because I think they leave the previous year up and give you a choice sometimes. Why is it so confusing?
Well, because when you log into the FAFSA, they actually present both school years right in front of you to choose from. And like right now, if you log on to the FAFSA site, or let's even take next week, when you log into the FAFSA site, right in front of you, you can click the button that says 2015/16 or 2016/17. Some people may very easily and understandably, because we are currently moving from 2015 into 16, select that, thinking I'm applying for it now and this is the right time and this is the right year. And we know some people who have actually done that and completed it and submitted it, but their kid's a senior in high school and they've now applied for financial aid for this year that this child is in high school, which is, free when you're at a public school. So nonetheless, it was an exercise, unfortunately, for that person in futility. They need to go back into what will come out in just a matter, shortly at the beginning of any new year, or, well, that's actually going to change. You're going to have to pay attention and realize that you're applying for aid for the year in which the school year you're going to be in that you want to receive money for.
So the short answer is that it is confusing if you're not paying attention. So in the example that I started off with, the gentleman, his name is Michael. I was talking to him in December of 2015, and he had filled out the 2015-2016 FAFSA for his child. The problem is that his child graduates 2016 and is going to school 2016-2017. That's really the issue. All right, we're going to do one more mistake here, and then Pearl will go through chat and answer some Q&A, just to try to catch up here. I want to make sure we're not missing any. So this is a question I'm going to ask you, Pearl. This has to do with thinking your income is too high to qualify. Pearl, and this is important. I'll explain why this is important in a little bit, so everyone should pay attention to this. Pearl, what is the ceiling where you can't qualify for financial aid anymore?
It's an infinite ceiling.
What does that mean?
What?
What the hell does that mean?
That means that...
Is there a ceiling?
There is no ceiling. There is no ceiling, because one income level does not bounce you out of the entire financial aid stratosphere. It is merely a portion of what is used in an entire formula that determines whether or not you might be eligible for aid.
All right, let me hop in here, because that's getting a little esoteric. There are, I don't know the exact number, 77, I believe, factors in financial aid. One of them is income. It's important, right? It's like 22 to 47%. It's important, but it's by far and away not the only factor. So we have clients who make $200,000, $300,000, $500,000 who qualify for aid. We have clients who make $150,000 who don't qualify for aid, right? I mean, I think it's fair to say we have some clients. I mean, you were looking at tax returns that were in 7 figures the other day, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
It's important to keep in mind, of course, as a reminder, there is need-based financial aid, and then there is merit-based aid. Okay.
So that's actually a segue. So let's round off that discussion that way, and then we'll go into chat. I just want to make sure that we're not we're not neglecting anybody in chat. So let's say you're not going to qualify for need-based aid, and let's say you know that for sure somehow because you've talked to an expert. Should you still fill out the FAFSA? That's a question we've gotten so many times.
Whether or not we should complete the FAFSA?
If you're not going to qualify for need-based aid, should you do a FAFSA anyway?
I just spoke to clients about this today. First of all, you don't know where your income is going to place formulaically in the entire scheme of the formula, and what that would mean in terms of your ability to get aid. But let's say you have untold amounts of income and untold amounts of assets, which is primarily the components that make up whether one receives aid. Often, schools that are considering you for merit aid, which has nothing to do with what your financial need is, will also require you to fill out these financial aid forms. So often what we see is people don't even bother applying, and they leave money that they could have had, whatever the savings would have been, even if you can afford it. If you are looking at a reduction of the sticker price of a school to whatever tune it is, why wouldn't you want to throw your application for this in the hopper so that you can be considered?
All right, cool. So yeah, so some schools want you to do it anyway. We're not sure. You won't know that until you apply, but everyone should fill out the forms. That's really the bottom line, because you never know. We've seen surprises every year. All right, so Pearl, let me zip through some chat here, and I just want to make sure that we're not missing anyone here. So I see a lot of questions or comments like, Pearl, I'm getting dizzy. Poor Pearl. Okay, fine. A lot of sympathy. All right, retirement annuity is pre-tax dollars deposited into an account. That's Barbara. I'm not sure who that is in response to, but I think what Barbara's talking about is I guess the tax treatment of an annuity, and technically what's considered to be a retirement annuity. But I'm not sure. I'm embarrassed. I'm not sure under the financial aid rules if that's the same definition. I mean, that makes sense under IRS rules. So, okay, so let me go on.
I can answer, in terms of there being a difference between a scholarship aid versus a merit aid. Ultimately, when the process shakes out and in March and April, when you've submitted your financial aid forms, you've heard back from schools, the process of application for these merit versus financial aid is quite similar. It's the same form. It's not that there's a FAFSA for merit aid and a FAFSA for need-based aid consideration. You submit both, and when you get an award package, sometimes the schools will tell you at the outset when you're being given admission what your merit award is to look like. And come March, April, when you're given an award package, it will include whatever merit aid has been awarded to you, but it will also line item any need-based aid that you're entitled to as well. So that's the process.
Sometimes colleges have separate scholarship applications, but
right.
most of the time they just consider you automatically. All right, so Fred had a question. I don't know if you got this one, Pearl, because I didn't. I think this is when we were trying to get you on the air here. I assume divorce has no impact on the definition of parent, quote unquote parent, i.e. parent definition includes both parents, not just custodian. So Fred, let me just rephrase that, because I think I know what you're asking. The FAFSA asks about the custodial parent, and the custodial parent is the parent that the kid resides with the majority of time, period. Now, if that parent remarried, that household income is considered in the financial aid formulas. That's the bummer. So we've seen situations where the parent who looks worse on paper, income and asset-wise, meaning better for financial aid, somehow, even if he lives far away, is the custodial parent. You have to do this in good faith. I'm not judging, but if there is some flexibility about which parent the kid spends a majority of time with, I think you should consider that strategically. in the financial aid formulas and how you fill out, these forms. What I will say is you do have to be very careful about this because you don't want to have one address on the application, the common application. You don't want to have another address for the financial aid forms. That's one thing. The second comment is some colleges care about the non-custodial parent anyway. They will ask, so there's approximately 4,000 colleges that take the FAFSA. There's a smaller subset of colleges that require the CSS profile in addition to the FAFSA. That's like 270, 260, I'm not sure the exact number. And then out of that 270, there are about a third, maybe 80 or so, 90 or so that require the non-custodial parent profile. So you have to be careful about which schools you're applying to. And I guess the last comment I want to make is that just because one parent declares the kid as a dependent on the tax returns does not mean that that parent is also the custodial parent for financial aid purposes, because in many divorce cases, parents switch off back and forth. So, Pearl, you see anything in chat that we should address before we move on?
I'm addressing a little bit. I'm just looking through them.
Got some FAFSA, FSA ID stuff. Well, I love how they had to call it FSA ID just to make it more confusing, so it looks like FAFSA if you read it quickly. Love that. There's so many silly acronyms, right? There's SAR, EFC, crazy, confusing stuff. All right, I've got one right here. Yeah, it's hard to read these because they keep coming in here. Pearl said custodial. This is from Nadine. Custodial account is a parent asset. No, it's a custodial account. It's a child asset. Custodial account is a child asset. Pearl, you concur?
Yes, I concur.
It's black and white.
So, right.
All right, next. Amy, what would the tax penalty be for taking money out of a UTMA? Now, my child turns 18 in 10 days. Should I move it? Okay. You want some legal advice. I'm not the guy to give it to you, but I can walk you through it generally, and you can draw your own conclusions, or we can talk about it offline if you really want to. But here's the deal. We can't give you legal advice. I'm not even a practicing lawyer anymore. I don't think Pearl is either. Even if we were, you're not our clients. But what you have to look at is what's in the standard that you as custodian have to adhere to is what's in the best interest of the kid. If you get sued somehow, if your child sues you. So that may be a remote possibility. Hopefully, I'm not sure about how that would work in our family based on recent events. So moving money out of a custodial account for a child may or may not have tax consequences. I mean, if it's in a bank, there's probably not going to be any capital gains or anything like that. But if it's a stock, or a mutual fund or something like that you have to look at it. But you have to be also concerned with the legal consequences. Definitely consult with your financial guy or your CPA or someone like that. Pearl, you got anything else before we move along here?
Nope, not on that.
Really? Because there's some more. All right, you've been trying to keep up with your busy little fingers here?
A little bit.
Okay. All right, so let's go on here. I think this one is kind of self-evident. This is, let's see, the belief that the forms are straightforward. That's mistake number 12. And by the way, we're giving out copies of these slides, not signed, but if you don't catch every note. I mentioned that before, but for those of you who joined us a little late, we're talking about whether the forms are straightforward or not. This, I think, is self-evident. I put up this slide in every presentation that I do, I think. This is, I think I have to do it. This is the financial aid formula, the simplified view of the financial aid formula. This is not straightforward. Pearl, we have some very, very smart people as clients who are great with paperwork, accountants, lawyers, CPAs, whatever, but they feel like this is a specialty and they can't do it themselves. They don't have it's not that they don't have the brain power, they just don't have the time to do it. So would you say this process is straightforward, based on what you know and what you've experienced?
Well, I think if you were to print out a form and take a pen and put numbers in, I'm not suggesting that they're the correct numbers, but that process of papering a form, printing out a form, putting in some numbers, sending it in and saying you're done, yeah, that's probably an easy process. Whether or not you know all the thousands of pages of regulations that go into how you determine the actual numbers that you input into these places is a wholly different question and a wholly different story. And is that easy, getting it right so that you can take advantage of the financial aid benefit that you're entitled to? That's a very different question, and that's not so easy, because we've had very learned doctors, lawyers, business owners, numbers people, tax specialists who get it wrong, because this is a niche unto itself, and you could even know lots about tax planning, but you may not know about tax planning, tax ramifications, and the college financial aid process. It is an entity unto itself.
Okay. All right. I think that's fair enough. And we have a tax person. We have we don't do our own we have an electrician. So
correct.
All right. Let's go through the next mistake. The next mistake is rushing through the forms, and that's just I don't think we need to spend a lot of time on that, but that happens to a lot of people because they underestimate the amount of time it's going to take, or they just don't want to do the forms, so they blow it off. I mean, they procrastinate. So you can't rush through these forms.
Right.
Whatever, if you're going to do them yourself, that's fine. You don't have to use us. You don't have to use anyone else. But just don't rush through them. Don't be sloppy, because that's when errors occur, and even a small error can mean a $13,000 difference, for example.
And frankly, it is. I don't know what percentage of our people on the webinar are parents of upcoming rising freshmen or rising college students, as opposed to those who have them in college. It is more difficult to kind of put a bad foot forward or your worst foot forward with a financial aid form because you were haphazard one year, and then in subsequent years, when you learn what's what, to submit it the right way, it's sort of hard to go backwards and say, well, gee, but I made a mistake. If you get it right the first time, as Billy Joel says, get it right the first time. That's the main thing.
Wow, this is the best financial aid webinar that cites Billy
For the
Joel.
Billy fans.
Okay, very. There's a lot on here, I can tell. All right, so that was good. So here's another mistake that I want you to talk about, which is not using your legal name on the financial aid forms. Like, what's the deal with that?
I'm sorry?
How can people make what's the mistake that has to do with not using the legal proper name on the financial aid forms? Explain how that happens.
Well, if you do not use your legal name, legal meaning what your tax return says. Your tax return has your name, sometimes with your middle initial, sometimes with your maiden name stuck in there, hyphenated, not hyphenated, your status as on your tax return. That needs to match the name and information that you input in your financial aid forms. To the extent that it does not, it will ultimately get kicked back. Actually, initially in the FSA ID application process, and if you have a delay with that because the name you've given does not match what the U.S. Treasury has on your tax return, and the Social Security Administration doesn't have for you, then you run into the snag of more delays, because if they can't match it up, then you can't electronically sign your form, you can't submit it, you can't apply for loans. Just check it out and transcribe it as it's written in your tax return.
All right, cool. So let's. This is similar. I mean, it's different, but similar issue. So just spend a little bit of time on this. How do you transpose your Social Security numbers? How easy is that to do? And talk about some of those things you've spotted in over the years.
Sure, it is easy to do because why? We're all human, we're all flawed, and we all make mistakes. But unfortunately, those mistakes can cause delays, and of course, the sooner you are completed with this and well within your deadlines, the more money is available for your family, essentially, to be earmarked to you.
You've seen tax returns that have had wrong Social Security numbers.
I've seen tax returns with wrong Social Security numbers. I've seen tax returns with giving the whole family accidentally the same birthday. And those things need to be corrected before, because ultimately in the FAFSA process, I can tell you, Yes, you submit your FAFSA soon after it comes out, even with estimates before your next year's tax return is completed. You don't wait until you complete your tax return in order to submit this form. You submit it with estimates. Ultimately, you go back in once you've filed that year's tax return and you make those updates and changes and you resubmit it.
Yeah. All right. Let me. You're getting a little off course here, just because we no. I mean, it's all good information.
I just can't help myself.
Yeah. Well, let's financially, it's exciting.
It is.
Okay.
I have no idea.
Wrong date of birth. That is number 16, and really it's the same comment. I mean, don't make these mistakes because of delays. Mistake number 17. Pearl, I don't think these really happen so much anymore now that we're in the electronic age, but leaving a field blank is
generally it will get kicked back with a bunch of red X's and make you feel like, you know, you've done something horrific. But yes, it won't really advance until you put some answers in.
Okay. Here's this is common, this one. Putting down, mistake number 18 is putting down your incorrect income.
Yeah.
So tell us exactly what the FAFSA and the CSS profile ask for and why you shouldn't just put down your adjusted gross income.
Okay. Well, for example, sometimes people will be a self-employed business owner and not collect a W-2 income. Okay. And they may inadvertently, nonetheless, input a salary amount in their income space for themselves when in fact they receive no salary, and the only amount they should be including is the distribution income that they net out of their business in any given year. For a self-employed business owner, that is much more transient than perhaps somebody who's at the same job over and over and receives a W-2 income. That's a mistake, because that is not going to match up with how your tax return is going to lay out, and it's going to become a red flag. And with any other red flag, and we've sort of touched on, but we haven't labeled it as such, whatever the red flag is, and whether it's because of your income, because of a transposed social security number, birth date, any red flag basically pulls your file up and puts it back at the end of the line again, something that nobody wants.
All right, so that's again in the category of delay. Now here, let me just to pick up on that. There's all sorts of income that's asked about on the financial aid forms, right? And it's not just your adjusted gross income. There's a breakdown. The CSS profile asks for a little bit more of a breakdown than the FAFSA, and this ties into mistake number 19. Which
and untaxed income. Yes, that's correct.
Yeah. So failure to include untaxed income. So,
that's right.
So talk about that.
Okay, so your untaxed income, amongst other things, I mean, but the most there's untaxed income that's disability income. There's child support received is untaxed income, but a main one that affects many people is your contributions to your retirement account in a previous year. Even though that's untaxed income, there is a field for it on the on actually both the FAFSA and the CSS profile, and that amount does get included back into your income amount for the formulas. And if you fail to include it initially, and let's just say, yeah, you made a contribution, and this all can be verified by your W-2 and within your tax return, what your contribution is. If you just omit it altogether and then down the pike, because ultimately, whatever you initially say and you're estimating with, that's one thing, but ultimately, the gig is up because the schools get the actual information. And if you had a swing of $30,000 that you failed to include on that initial submission, but down in March, April, when after they've gotten your tax returns and they see what's what and they see what you've contributed, they will add that money back in and they will recalibrate your award. And you know, it's just not a position you want to be in. You don't want to think for 5-6 months that your award looks one way and then it feels like a bait and switch because you got it wrong in the first place. When they change that award and you've been relying on it, maybe even determining which school you're going to choose based on what the then represented award was going to be. So that's a big mistake.
We got a lot to get through here, so let's press on.
I'll aim for brief.
I want to go through a couple more mistakes here. We're going to do a little more Q&A because there's a lot more questions that are piling up, and then I'm going to do the raffle prize, and then I also want to tell you guys about our service a little bit if you're interested. So, are you guys finding this helpful so far? I just want to do one more check here now that we seem to have ironed out the tech issues. I feel like I just jinxed it. But if you're finding this helpful, say yes, and I promise you we're going to try to get through all the questions, even if we have to stay on even longer. Mistake number 20 is including employer contributions to your retirement plans, right? Not employee, not your contributions, but employer contributions. So Pearl, I'll just handle that one. That is, it's an easy mistake to make because if you just read it quickly, or you're rushing through the forms, you're being sloppy or whatever, and you see the question about employee contributions, and you read it as as employer or something, you're not penalized on your employer contribution. You're only the only factor that the financial aid forms, financial aid formulas will look at are your contributions. So, and just to round out that discussion, you have a certain amount of income. Let's say you earn $150,000 that year. If you contribute $10,000 to your retirement plan, then your adjusted gross is arguably $140,000 because you get the tax break for that contribution. Now, what the financial aid formulas do is they add that back. They add back the contribution that you made. Pointing's not polite. The contribution that you made, because I guess they don't want you to double dip, get the tax break and the financial aid benefit. So it sort of makes sense to me, as much as I hate to admit that. However, if your employer also, let's say they match the 10,000, or I guess they don't even do that anymore for the most part. Let's say they contribute 2,500 bucks. That is not anything that the financial aid forms need to know about. So keep that off of your forms. Okay. All right. Now, Pearl, this is something that I want your help on here because you look at tax returns all day long. Mistake number 21. Incorrect amount of taxes paid. There's a question on the FAFSA that asks you, what'd you pay in taxes?
Yes, and it's pretty straightforward, but people get into a head about this because, the feeling is generally that, okay, it sort of seems straightforward, but on the other hand, there are all these landmines, and I don't want to be the one to screw up. Your tax, so it's irrespective of taxes perhaps you've paid along the way, or what you're still owing, or this, that, and the other thing. Your taxes that they are asking for are on line 56 of your tax return. That is the tax to include.
What are some of the other things, I was just messing around in chat there, but what are some of the other things that people get confused by? They throw in their property taxes, they throw in, just explain that, because I don't know why that's so controversial.
Right, your tax, your real estate taxes are included in your itemized deductions, which is a line item on both of the forms. But if you did not, if you have not included your real estate taxes, all of those are included elsewhere. So you really only supposed to be including your federal income taxes as determined by what you've made in income on your line 56.
Well, I'm just trash talking right now because Ahmed claims that he won the prize last time, but it was actually Fred. I wrote this in the email today. Fred from Hopewell Junction, who actually won the prize last time. See, I told you people really care about these prizes. All right, so let me just take a quick break here. I want to tell you guys.
What about your state tax? I'll interrupt. I see what happens with state tax. There are also state scholarships as well that each individual state, once the FAFSA triggers often these state forms, because it shows maybe state schools within your state that you live in that you're applying to, and that is, could be a function of where your state taxes come in.
Yeah, so one more thing on the taxes before I tell you about our service, then we finish up the mistakes and we get to the Q&A and the raffle. Is that I can't remember when this was. It might have been 2 or 3 years ago when the FAFSA said how much did you pay in taxes, and this then cited to a specific line on the 1040, but that line was wrong. Do you remember that? You remember what I'm talking about?
I'm answering chat.
Well, the 2 years ago, I think, maybe 3 years ago, the FAFSA said, what's the amount of taxes that you paid? And then they cited a specific line on the 1040, but that line was wrong. You remember that? It was like when they changed the 1040. Are you ignoring me?
I'm answering chat. I can't multitask.
Okay. So clearly I rate lower than chat. So that's cool. So the point is that, and Pearl, can you please listen to me? If the FAFSA this year, we've already taken a look at it, but it's not publicly released yet. But if the FAFSA says, hey, you need to go to line blah 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 61 or whatever it is on the 1040 and tell us the amount of taxes you paid, just be very careful that's the actual line, because 2 years ago or 3 years ago there was a mistake. Or maybe they hadn't gotten the right line. Do you remember that at all, Pearl? That's the third time I'm asking you.
Was still answering chat. I'm sorry, but I
think we have issues.
Come on.
All right. So putting our issues aside, so I put up this offer. We do the financial aid forms for people, and I'm going to tell you a little bit more about it. But you can see how complicated this stuff is, and the thing is that most people pay attention, they take notes and all that, but 48 hours later, they barely even remember 50% of what was covered, and a week later they don't even, or 10 days or whatever later, they don't even remember that they were even on this webinar. So if you feel like you need some help, this is overwhelming, take us up on an offer. You can click that offer right now, the orange button, and it's going to take you into another window, so you're not going to miss out on any of this banter or me asking Pearl the same question 5 times with her blowing me off, which is kind of like our real life. But this webinar is really for 2 people. It's 2 types of people. One, the people who want to do this on their own, which is great. Hopefully we're giving you value, judging from the feedback we are. And for people who aren't, who want that extra help, it's a very low frills, just doing your financial aid forms, and that's it. So let me continue with mistake number 22, which is trashing your records in the event of a verification. So verification ain't fun. Verification is the financial aid equivalent of an audit. So the thing about a verification is that the federal target for verification is 30%. And some schools, many schools actually, will voluntarily verify 100% of applications. So what does that mean? Verification just means that they over-scrutinize whatever you've put in. So if there's some sort of red flag, and we've talked about some of them, but for example, if your forms are inconsistent, if you put down widely different numbers on your FAFSA compared to your CSS profile, or you put the names wrong or something like that. Pearl mentioned before that if you put a middle initial down, or you don't put a middle initial down, which is different than what you have on the FAFSA, that type of thing, that will likely trigger some extra scrutiny. And when
and of course, a big one, I'll just add to that, is if you are being cute, or even if you're not trying to be cute, and you do not include things like, a business you may own, or something that, or an investment that you may have sold or have, or whatever, and if there is evidence of it in your tax return that you yourself may not be aware of, but it is unearthed nonetheless by the financial aid office, because as you see or have noticed, the schools are asking for your full tax return. And if they pick up on something like that, gig is up. They are going to go and ask you to verify all that information. So Think
Yeah,
about it.
chances are you're not going to get more money after a
Probably
verification.
not.
Okay, so this mistake number 23 ties in inconsistent forms. Pearl, how can that actually happen? Just walk us through a common scenario where the FAFSA and the profile are inconsistent.
Okay, well, typically the CSS profile becomes available in October of the prior year of the graduation year, and the CSS profile is asking a multitude of questions about your income, and at that time you're generally giving estimates of these things. Okay, so if you submitted, a few months go by and you now are filling out the FAFSA, and it's a new thing, it's a new form, and you fill it out with different information that is not just accounting for the few months that have gone by, but is wholly different in some way than the CSS profile originally submitted. That too will raise a red flag. The inconsistencies and often trigger
Excuse you. Was that what are you thinking over there?
trigger a verification.
I thought you were slurring a little bit, but I didn't know. So
Excuse me.
So, just when we think we
We're
dealt
like
with
Coke, the real thing. What can I say?
just when we thought we dealt with all the technical issues, I could come over and burp you if you need that. I've done that in about 15 years. All right, so here's mistake number 24. Non-disclosure of sibling 529s, and we actually got a comment about a question about that before. I just want to repeat it again. The sibling, any money you have, not only in your college-bound teen's name, but the younger siblings, those are all subject to, they come into play on the FAFSA. So, so that's one thing. So they are considered parent assets on the FAFSA. And then what's the deal with the profile, Pearl? How are 529s disclosed on the profile?
My apologies. I'm just responding to somebody who said I sound like a kangaroo. Well, we're all not perfect. I'm sure you might be as well, but
I don't even know what a kangaroo sounds like.
What's that?
I don't even know what a kangaroo sounds like. But what does?
No, I'll just take it as a general insult. Thank you. We'll make sure you get that prize this time.
That's nice.
Okay.
Sounds like a nasty kangaroo. So what is a 529? How is that disclosed on the CSS profile different than the FAFSA?
We have seen the 529 treated both ways depending on the financial aid form and the school requiring it. If we have also seen the 529 is actually asking it, parents often try to split hairs and say, well, but the 529 is really for our third grader. It's not for a college applicant. So we'll just put 0 there. Okay, the question asks about the entire family and how much you have entirely for all children, and that amount goes into the form. And we have seen the 529 because it is actually considered generally a parent asset, but we have seen because the actual purpose of the 529 is money that's earmarked for qualified college tuition and expenses. It has also been treated as a kid asset.
Right. So I mentioned that before, but yeah. So I'm just looking at chat here too because I think it was Valerie. She asked a very good question, which was, what about the was it Valerie? Yeah, my parents have a 529 for my kids, so I have to disclose these. So here's what's interesting about that scenario. We call that the grandparent 529. We in the biz call that the grandparent 529.
We kangaroos.
So okay. Maybe he's calling me a kangaroo, Pearl. So the 529 for the grandparent actually, in the grandparent's name, actually does not appear anywhere on the FAFSA. The FAFSA only asks about parent and student stuff, parent income, parent assets, student income, student assets. So it's exempt entirely, so you don't have to disclose that. But there's a catch, of course, because there's always a catch. There's always a catch. That is that the 529 is the grandparent 529 although it's exempt, once that money is used to pay for college, once it goes from the parents' 529 brokerage account to the college, then that amount that's paid is assessed toward the kid's eligibility. So to give you numbers, if the grandparent pays $20,000 to the college out of the grandparent's 529, $10,000 is penalized. 50% of that amount is penalized. So the student is now $10,000 less eligible for need-based financial aid. So good question, and I'm glad you brought that up. And that's a little complicated, but that's I appreciate that. Thank you, Valerie. All right, mistake number 25, and I know we have some guidance counselors on this webinar. Expecting your guidance counselor to be an expert. So for those of you who are on this webinar who are guidance counselors, that is so awesome. I really I'm not wearing a hat. If I were wearing one, I would tip it to you, because I think this is so important to try to understand, because everyone, I don't care how much money you make, pretty much everyone is wondering how they can get money for college. Now, because this is such a complicated type of discipline, it's very hard to keep abreast of how everything works. And that's why accountants, forget about guidance counselors, accountants who you think are good with numbers, they don't know anything for the most part about financial aid, because they're so busy keeping up with their own work, their own, the tax code changes every year. And if you try to talk to your accountant during tax season, it's near impossible. So guidance counselors, the average ratio of kid to guidance counselor nationally is something like 500 to 1. They are overworked, they're overwhelmed, they don't have the bandwidth to be able to then learn this type of stuff. So if you have a guidance counselor who cares and does things like try to improve their own professional development, their own professional education, like going on webinars like this, or taking it upon themselves to learn other information, that is, let me just tell you, you're in rarefied air. That is very unusual. That is great, and you should really buy them some sort of gift, as long as it's as long as it's ethical. You should be very nice to them. So the next mistake is mistake number 26, relying on your financial guy. There's a lot of people who are they hold themselves out as financial advisors. They might even be certified financial planners or something. But again, that doesn't make them the expert on everything financial. And in many cases, when you strip it away, what they're really trying to do is to talk you into buying some sort of product they can make a commission on. So remember before we were talking about the exempt assets such as insurance products and annuities and so on and so forth. There are financial guys who unscrupulously will try to talk you into buying some sort of product ostensibly for financial aid purposes. That being said, I personally know several dozen, probably more than that, financial advisors who I have helped train, and they are not unscrupulous, but there's sort of a stigma in the college planning business about people who are financial advisors who are also college planners. So you have to be very, very, I guess, wary of who you're taking advice from, whether there's some ulterior motive or some other agenda, some hidden agenda. Mistake number 27, I guess I covered, relying on your accountants. Again, they're not experts. They're very busy with their tax returns. Pearl, I want you to help me with this one. This is one of our favorites because we talk about this one all the time. Mistake number 28, listening to your know-it-all sister-in-law, the one whose kid got in ED to Penn.
Okay. Well, and this piece of advice goes well beyond just this particular area, but it applies the same. Don't compare your insides and what you know to be the truth about your financial household and its health and its attributes with someone else's chit-chat or their outsides, if you will, just to be a little less cynical. But what you hear from someone else, even a dear relative, about every facet about that goes, and I'm certain they're not sharing absolutely every nook and cranny about what went into their application. Don't compare yourself. I was talking to a woman yesterday whose daughter applied early decision to Cornell, my happy alumni, my happy alma mater rather, and a student who had about 10 points less on their grades, their GPA, and roughly, maybe a little bit better on the essay. She didn't understand for the life of her, because there was, in her mind, no other differences between them, and how could she not have gotten in, and how could this other one have gotten in, it's happened the other way around. This one got so much money, but what I know, they make 100 so much more, blah, blah, blah. You haven't seen their tax return. You don't know what else is going into this figure, and just be careful not to go down that path. It's not leading you any place that you're going to be happy with.
Yeah. I got to tell you that this whole process is so weird. Even though we've been advising people for almost 15 years, it's a weird subculture. It's a weird sort of period in kids and parents' lives, and part and parcel of that is all the chit chat and urban legend and bluster and blather and posturing and all that type of stuff that sometimes parents do when they're bragging about their kids who got a full ride to Princeton for lacrosse, even though Princeton doesn't offer athletic scholarships, and a great lacrosse scholarship might be $5,000 at a $60,000 a year school, that type of thing. So just because you heard it on authority from someone, that doesn't mean they've seen your tax returns and they know how the financial aid rules work. So just take everything, even everything we're saying, take everything with a grain of salt. All right, mistake number 29. We got to zip through the rest of these, Pro. Mistake number 29, divorce, submitting the wrong parent information. I guess I covered that a little bit before, which was that if you can say in good faith that you have the parent who has lower income, lower assets is the custodial parent, meaning the one that the kid resides with the majority of time, then you're have a better chance at getting financial aid. And actually, Pearl, I don't know if you've heard me talk about this, but our friend, who of course we can't name, who was going to get married to a very well-to-do doctor. Do you know who I'm talking about?
No, but I'll keep going.
Yeah, well, we remember that I told her, hey, put off the delay for like 4 years till your kids get out of college.
She was smart.
Yeah. You know who I'm talking about now,
Listen up,
right?
folks. Yes.
Yeah, okay. And, her husband wasn't exactly happy with that advice, but she cleaned up from some really expensive
Her now
schools.
husband.
Yeah, right. Now they're married. Yeah, exactly.
She waited.
Yep. All right. Mistake number 30. This is related. If you're divorced, non-disclosure of your step parents' information. So what I mean by that is the FAFSA asks about the step parents, the custodial parents' household information. And even if your step parent, your mom is remarried, let's say mom is remarried and she's got a husband, and the husband has no legal or ethical obligation to pay for college for the mom's kid, that's not what this question is asking. It's about the resources, not the mental, not the desire to pay. It's the ability to pay. So household income and assets for a newly married or a remarried spouse are included. It's not just the custodial parent, right?
Yes.
Yes. Are you back in chat again?
Yes.
This is kind of like, when we're watching TV and you fall asleep and I try to take the clicker from you and you get angry at me because you're watching even though your eyes are closed. Like you're always doing something else when. Okay. Mistake number 31 is Pearl. Mistake number 31 is indicating head of household when you are not. So explain how that can happen, because apparently a whole lot of people make mistakes on the tax return when they incorrectly indicate their head of household. And then they try to do that on the FAFSA, but somehow it gets screwed up.
Yes. Well, so basically there are different tax determinations based on whether you're married jointly, whether you have dependents, whether you are married filing separately, whether you're for tax purposes, claiming children if you're in a divorced situation as head of household. All of these different determinations under the tax code mete out different results. And if you just by your thoughts feel that you fall under one demarcation and incorrectly choose what's ultimately going to be put there by your tax return, yet another mistake to avoid, get it right, and get these things done correctly the first time. Otherwise, again, you don't want to be red flag, kicked back to the end of the line, open up a can of worms of inquiry.
All right. Mistake number 32. If you're self-employed, overvaluing your business, your business. And I talked about this before when I talked about Tina, who lives in our neighborhood, and she is a contractor, and her problem was she gave a real-world value of her business. You got to use a FAFSA value. And although she applied to not only FAFSA but also CSS profile schools, still they accepted our revised lowball valuation of her business. So be very careful about how you answer that question. Don't be optimistic on the financial aid forms. Be pessimistic. Most people have a business value of 0. Mistake number 33, saying no to work study. Why is that an issue? We get these questions all the time. Should I check off that I'm interested in work study on the FAFSA? And the answer is yes. That doesn't mean you're obligating yourself to take work study. What it means is that
you're not a brat.
Want money. What's that?
It means you're not a brat who's unwilling to take assistance. It's all about the image, folks, and what you want to look like to the school who's making a determination on you. Oh, you won't work in our fry shop, huh? Okay. Well.
Yeah. Well, that's funny. It's a little
they say these things are entertainment, right?
Yeah, well, no, it's fine. So there is some element to that, and frankly, that's because most financial aid officers did not grow up in affluent areas like where we live and where our office is. But keep in mind there are people all over the country. I think actually out of the country, somewhat on this call also. But the bottom line is that if you need money and you're applying for financial aid, it's going to look a little weird if you say, "I want your money, but I don't really want to have to work for it." And if you have if you're a parent whose idea is, Justin, Rachel, Liam, going to school is your job. Okay, that's all we ask of you. Just go to school and get good grades. Then that's going to sort of come through in this question. And personally, I have to tell you, when I was in school, I played basketball. I also worked 10 to 12 hours a week. And then when I wasn't playing basketball, I picked up all these other hours. So I was always one of those guys, as Pearl said, serving fries and stuff, which had its perks. It had its fringe benefits. So I personally can relate to kids.
Didn't you?
What?
You made the fries too, didn't you?
Yeah, I cleaned up too. Did it all, baby. But the thing is that I actually think working is good because you meet people. You also budget your time. So the point is, this is just, we should angle this back to financial aid. Indicate that you are interested in work study, and then you can decide later whether or not to take it. But Pearl and I think your kid should work, okay? Just in case you weren't sure. All right, mistake number 34, using the wrong email address. Sometimes it's providing your kid's email instead of your own. Pearl, talk about what happens when people don't check their email addresses. That's what this is really about. Don't necessarily, if you're going to fill out a FAFSA with an email address, that email better get checked, or else what can happen?
Well, what can happen is, and we have truly seen this happen in our experience, the student email is provided, and you get into your school, you find out the awards, you sign up, you put your $500 housing deposit in, and you think, okay, now that's terrific, game is over, my kid's going to college, la, la, la. Well, we had a client who was at that point of la, 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 and time went on, school kids in school, got the books, got the dorm, decorated from Bed Bath & Beyond, the works, and lo and behold, when the tuition bill came out, the $40,000 reduction on the tuition bill that she had received in the spring prior and had the expectation for wasn't put on the bill. Uh-oh. Well, what happened? A multitude of emails regarding the student loan process and buttoning it up and finishing and whatever forms and signatures that were required, went to the student who didn't think it was important anymore. Here she was in her, with her mini fridge and her beautiful dorm room she doesn't need to pay attention to this, so she deleted them. Okay, well, when they took the 08 award that's when when the what hit the fan, And so the point here is perhaps you either want to have your email as the parent on any of these corresponding email places that are going to trigger ultimate conversation with the billing office at the school. And or you want to have a heart-to-heart with your child and say, look, any email you receive from this school, forward it to me. Don't try to figure it out for yourself. Forward it to me, the parent, so we do not end up in that situation.
I just want to jump in here. Can you guys see how just this one thing alone, I mean, I think we've covered a lot of stuff here, but just this one thing alone, this one tip alone that Pearl just said, that could potentially save you not only thousands of dollars, but a lot of gray hair and
a few years on your life. Right?
Yeah, exactly. This is more than about financial aid. All right, we have about 4 more of these to go through, then we're going to do the raffle, then we're going to wrap up here. Mistake number 35, failure to submit to all colleges. So that's very easy to do. Pearl, we had gotten a question before in the emails from a guidance counselor that I wanted to try to answer that had to do with the FAFSA that lets you submit to only 10 colleges. So that's part of this answer. And then what about the other half, which is I think you actually went back and forth with a client today who hadn't checked over all the colleges that we were supposed to submit forms to. So can you talk about both? First, the
sure.
10 at a time rule, and then the other story?
First issue is straightforward. The FAFSA form itself only permits you to populate 10 schools at a time and submit to those 10 schools at a time. Then once you've submitted it, there is generally a 1 to 3 business day waiting period while your FAFSA is processing before it becomes wholly processed, and you are not able to submit any additional schools at that point. Once your FAFSA has completed processing that initial 10 you have submitted, you can then go back and add in the remaining 10 schools or up to 10 schools. And if you have 40 schools that you're applying to, you will have to do this: submit 10, wait the few days for it to complete processing, submit the next batch of 10, wait the few days, and so forth. So don't panic, don't fret. That is why when you try to add that 11th school, it's not going, it's not working. That's why. In terms of not adding the right school, you can often, and again, this is a living process, this whole financial aid life this year, you can start off and your kid is applying to this school, that school, and the other school, the handful of 5, and then your forms get submitted, and then as you receive good news and bad news, and in between news, you perhaps choose during the middle of this process to add additional schools that you want to receive the forms. Well, you got to be proactive about it, make sure you have actually added it, and that each school, again, has its own requirements of what it needs, and you need to be mindful of that and pay attention to it.
All right, cool. So this is related to mistake number 36. In terms of being mindful and making sure that you follow up. You're not done after you file, and this is something we're constantly on our clients to do. We want to tell you this also. Make sure you follow up post-filing to ensure that all colleges received your forms. Pearl, can you talk about some of the nightmares that we've heard from clients?
Sure. Well, as you've probably noticed at this point, there will be Penn State just comes to mind. Penn State has many campuses, and and they're all right next to each other. You could submit to one of the schools that your child is applying to, or you think your child is applying to, and then come June, the school that your child is actually intending to attend tells you, hey, we never got your financial aid forms. Well, but I sent it to the Altoona campus. Well, that's different than us. You got to be very careful to make sure that the list of schools that you put into the FAFSA, into the CSS profile, are the forms and the schools that you actually intend to apply to. make sure those. The other comment, and this is because the other fear people have, not every school requires the CSS profile. So often people will say, hey, only a few of my schools or a handful of my schools are on the confirmation of the CSS profile. Well, that's because many schools don't require it at all, and you won't find those schools on your list.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, most schools don't. I mean, there's 4,000
Right.
colleges in the country, and about 260, 270 require the profile. So that the vast majority don't. All right, we're coming home here. Mistake number 37, failure to update the FAFSA with new information. So what we're talking about there is that if you file with estimates and then your income comes in different, different than what you estimated, particularly if it's lower, you don't rely on the financial aid office to make the adjustment for you, although they're supposed to. You should update your FAFSA information with the new information. It's gonna theoretically all come out in the wash, but you're better off doing this sooner in the process because they can drag. So always, if you have some new information, always update it on the FAFSA. Mistake number 38. Believing that the final award is final. This is one of my favorite mistakes, and I have all these examples that I usually show of before and after. There's results of schools that lowballed kids in the beginning because colleges, let's face it, they're businesses and they don't always give their highest and best offer. So this one might actually be legible. This is a letter from Harvard University that told one of our clients from Canada that she wasn't going to get anything, and then after we negotiated a little bit and told them the real facts, they revised the offer from instead of $0, they said you're going to get between $16,200 and $19,000. So the point is that they're businesses, and don't expect them to give you the best offer possible. And I'm going to spend a little bit of time at the end here talking about how to negotiate, because I know a lot of people are interested in that. The best way, just to summarize, is to have other offers from other schools that compete with that school in your hip pocket. But the other circumstances that you can use if you don't have that are, like in this client's case, she was a doctor, she had a lot of assets, and she had a very high income, but she wasn't able to work because she had all sorts of medical bills and things that were dragging into. She had a lot of expenses. So her income had been dropping, but it wasn't reflected on her tax returns. So the tax returns that she had submitted were historical, but what was happening currently at the time that she filed her financial aid application were that she had these expenses from medical bills, she had a loss in income, she had a change in circumstances that weren't reflected on the financial aid form. So those are really, there's really three circumstances under which you can appeal. One is when you've had a loss of income that is not reflected on the financial aid form. Let's say you are filling out financial aid forms for 1 year in particular, but you get laid off in October or November. So you're still going to have earnings for most of that year, so it's not going to look so bad. But the reality, it might be that in February or March, you may not have a job at that point. So that's one example of change of income, a drop in income. If you're self-employed, it could be your business took a downturn. If you are another form is, like I said before, unexpected expenses. So it could be medical, it could be divorce, legal bills, you name it, anything like that. The rest of the story. These are non-formulaic things, by the way. These are other circumstances that the financial aid office can consider. And you owe it to yourself and, frankly, to your child to make these arguments to the financial aid office, to let them know, listen, you don't know the whole story. I know I look one way on paper, but here's the reality. And the third way is to have other offers from other schools that compete with that school. So I tell that story a lot. I'm gonna get to that after we go through the questions, if we have time. Mistake number 39 is basically related to what I just said, keeping your special circumstances a secret. Just because you think that the financial aid office is going to laugh at you doesn't mean that you should not try to make an argument. I mean, personally, I can tell you there's some arguments that won't float at all, such as, well, I know I make a lot of money, but I live in a very expensive part of the country. The financial aid office will pretty much just say, well, it's your choice, and you wouldn't make that much money elsewhere. So that's really one of the flaws of the whole financial aid formulas, is that they don't take expenses into account for the most part. But other things like the ones I talked about, a loss of a drop in income that wasn't expected, or unanticipated medical expenses or other expenses, those are very important to let them know about. Mistake number 40, starting too late. Pearl, you have some notes here which I can't even read.
Yes.
Does that remind you of a story?
Put it away, and I will just. I think I touched on this earlier. Some people, and this is an age-old question, are afraid to put their financial aid forms in because they are afraid it may affect their chances of admission. So they don't bother. Even though they need it, they just don't bother, and they wait until they find out their acceptance. We had somebody a couple of years back who was accepted to a competitive school and needed financial aid and waited until their acceptance and to applied and thought they were, getting away with, being as strategic as possible. And unfortunately, they fell flat because the school came back. Maybe they were onto it and said, hey, buddy, you said you didn't need it, and this is way later than we told you this was due, so sorry, no money from us. And that was an unfortunate result for someone who was, being so cautious. Ooh, I'm going to not tell them. I'm not going to tell them until I need, If you need it, you need it. If you don't need it, you don't need it. If you are a candidate and meritorious for that school, it should stand on its own.
All right, so that's one example of starting too late. Another example is that we have people, and I don't know if this is if I'm speaking to you and as you watch us and listen to us, but we have people who have gone to literally several years worth of these types of presentations, and in some cases they've taught us one-on-one, sometimes they haven't, or it's unbelievable. I mean, it's not unbelievable to me, I shouldn't say that, but it's just interesting or sometimes a little frustrating to me when I hear, hey, I've been listening to you for 3 years, I've seen you speak, I've been on your webinars and all that, and I did my forms a few months ago, and I think I made a big mistake. Or I just didn't, it just snuck up on me. I didn't think I was actually, my kid was actually going to really grow up and get out of diapers and go to college. And in either case, I know it's human nature to procrastinate. I'm certainly guilty of doing things like that too. But the stakes are very high, and the later you start, the fewer options you have. So don't start too late in the process. And the last mistake here before we get to the raffle and Q&A is not applying at all. I think Pearl and I hammered that home enough. Everyone should apply. So what I want to do now is, before we do the raffle, is I want to try to share my screen, which is always fun because there's that weird effect here. And I'm going to show you what we have at, can you see my screen now, Pearl?
I do.
At financialaidwarrior.com. We have a special offer, which, if you're watching the replay, I'm not sure what the timer is going to say, but if you go to financialaidwarrior.com, you'll see that we have 3 different forms prep services. One is if you're applying to a school that only takes the FAFSA, that's $4.99. You click on the orange button for that. If you are applying to a school that takes the FAFSA and the CSS profile, it's at $7.99. And we also have this new FAFSA profile and appeals core service, which is a discounted way for us to go to bat for you in your corner. I know I'm mixing my analogies, as your cut man, trying to help you negotiate even more financial aid than they gave you, because like I said before, a lot of schools do not give their highest and best offer. Normally, to do just the FAFSA and the profile, it's $9.95, and we also have, by the way, we also have payment plans here, and that's at financialaidwarrior.com. Pearl, could you put that into chat, just so people can see the
yes
the website, Financial Aid Warrior. And we have clients, quite honestly, who pay us $3,000 to $8,000, and they're private consulting clients, and they do that because they see the return on investment, in terms of the other advice that we give. This is just a pure forms prep service, and it's very quick and simple. I'll just have Pearl describe it for you in a minute. But the way it works really is you just give us all your stuff. We take care of everything else for you. So you don't have to worry about mistakes that are going to hurt your eligibility. You don't have to worry about blowing deadlines. We're going to coach you through that whole process. You don't have to worry about not being sure how to answer questions and not having anywhere to turn or all that. And this is really the lowest price we're ever going to be able to offer this service, because like I said, it's not a consulting thing. It's not $3,000 to $8,000. It's not even half of that. It's much less than what we typically charge. But because you took the time to sit through this with us and ask the questions, we want to reward you for that. Pearl, in terms of how it works, I know once you enroll at Financial Aid Warrior, then what happens next is they get a questionnaire immediately that gets sent to you after they fill it out. And then what happens?
I'm sorry, after they sign up and receive an introductory email from us, what happens?
Yeah, so they submit the questionnaire to you, which is their biographical information and their tax return, and then what happens after that? Yes,
the first thing you're triggered to do is send us a short questionnaire and the tax return. At that point, I take all of your information, analyze it, put it into our online system, see where things shake out. At that point, you get your secure link to our system to go through everything. And at that point, we will have some phone meetings and some discussions, making sure and memorializing all of the information that you have in the right places. And at that point, once that process is through, I then have what I need to most optimally and properly file your financial aid forms, so that you can rest assured that you are certainly getting and taking advantage of every opportunity with respect to financial aid process as you can.
So let me just jump in here just to clarify, because I'm seeing we're getting some questions. Mary Jo, I guess you answered her first question. Is that the price per school? No, that's one all-encompassing price. How many will you do the 1099 for? That's, again, it's unlimited. There's no limit. Yeah.
Right.
Nita said, when should we contact you if graduating 2017? Well, we're running the special for 4 days. Yeah. So, like I said, you're not going to get a lower price than this ever. So, we have plenty of people who are 2017 and younger. Gina, what's your turnaround time for the initial completion of the forms?
Try me.
I should let Pearl answer that, but a lot of that depends on the client. Like, how quickly do you get the stuff to us? I've seen Pearl do some crazy last-minute things in the same day, but
yes.
That's not ideal.
It is as quick as you get your information to me, and that I am generally not the holdup. If I have to ask and hound and re-ask you to give me some basic information, yes, it's going to be a delay, because there's not a darn thing I can do about it. But if you're timely and proficient, I pride myself on making myself very available to help you. If you've provided me your initial questionnaire and your tax return, I take it, I analyze it, I do my thing, I don't sleep much. I reach out to you immediately and get you, questions back towards you and arrange to set up a call. If you don't reply to that email and take advantage of setting up time to speak with me and to get everything the way it needs to, well, then the time is going to be quite delayed. If you do things right, we could do it in lightning speed.
Well, lightning speed. Yeah, I don't want to pigeonhole you into saying you're going to do it in lightning speed, but generally, a couple of business days, you're done. And like I said, Pearl's done some miracles. Jamie, thank you she could testify what Earl is saying is true. See, she's so fast that you left off the P.
It may be slower if you refer to me as a kangaroo. Just saying.
All right. So along those lines, Karen's saying I'm a lucky man. I am so lucky. So
I love you, Karen.
I wake up and I just think I feel so lucky, especially when. All right, never mind. So let's do the quiz, okay? Because I promised the quiz. This is for Roku, and just to remind you, the way this works, the raffle here. And Pearl, you can't answer this because Pearl's actually pretty lucky. She's won a bunch of raffles lately that have kind of blown me away. You won that just recently for the PTA or something, and then you won that bowling wine thing. Anyway, So the way this works is I'm going to say the question based on what I've been talking about up until now. Pearl and I've been talking about up until now, and then the first person to get it correct in chat is going to win the Roku. But again, give us a day or two to go through the chat log because we're not going to be able to keep an eye on it. We have a hard time keeping up with chat. So here we go. Here is the question for the raffle prize of the Roku. What is the income ceiling where you won't qualify for financial aid? Go. All right.
Right, I'm not answering.
While we are doing that, Pearl, now we should go through the rest of the Q&A because there's a little bit of a delay until people start answering this question. We had a lot of other questions.
Oh, look at these answers rolling in.
No, it's like
lightning.
Got a lot of
if
people.
You get me your forms this quickly, we're going to be in business.
Nice. Okay. Pearl, IRS DRT. Do you do that? That's the question from Karen. That's impressive that she knows what that is.
Sure.
The IRS DRT, is it like a stop on the 7 line? Or?
It is. So if you're traveling from the IRS DRT is the IRS data retrieval tool. Once you submit your FAFSA, and then ultimately your FAFSA is in a waiting stage until it has your already completed new tax returns. Even if we go ahead and manually input all of your tax information into your already submitted FAFSA, that's not good enough. You're ultimately going to get emails from the Department of Education encouraging you to use the IRS DRT, or data retrieval tool. And what that does, it actually allows you to port your actual tax return information that was submitted to the IRS from the IRS site directly into your FAFSA. Once that happens, the school is confident it has your not manually updated, but your actual tax return information as the IRS has and knows it, and they can finalize an award for your family once that's done.
All right. That's a great answer. So let's go through some of these questions here. I see you've been I guess what happens with our chat is that we can only see a certain amount, and I know there's a whole bunch that are no longer visible to us. So I'm just going to throw out some of these, and I think that they're going to benefit the whole group too, even if you answered them. So, Pearl, you would answer this question from Tiffany about whether special circumstances would constitute a child choosing to pursue a career in dance, which is really expensive. So I'm just going to broaden that question a little bit.
Right.
To any type of expense related to some sort of pursuit or some sort of volitional, what's the right word? Some sort of voluntary type of choice, as opposed to an expense related to a kid with severe medical problems, or someone with a learning disability who's got to see all sorts of tutors and stuff. Like, how would you treat those? Are those different, or are they considered the same? Are you ignoring me again?
I was chatting.
You have to repeat the question?
Yeah.
Okay. Special circumstances. The question was, my daughter's studying dance.
Yeah, okay.
Expensive.
No, I got it.
And I was saying, what about that versus my kid is autistic and he has all sorts of specialists and other health issues and expenses? Are those two both considered special circumstances?
They are not. They are not. And it's a very touchy thing. And this is to not knock anybody who may consider an expensive pursuit a special or exceptional circumstance. Typically, the special circumstances comments section available to you on the CSS profile refers to circumstances that are typically beyond your control, that have befallen your family in some way, that affect your ability to pay for college going forward, like a job loss, like significant medical expenses, like taking in an elderly parent and providing for all their financial needs. those are more typical examples of appropriate comments and explanations, whereas, oh, I've chosen, to pursue photography, or I'm not knocking any particular field. My father-in-law was a photographer, but I am not. But yes, but a pursuit like an expensive area like dance, and so that's expensive, does not really rise to the level of the exceptional circumstances they are speaking about, and in fact, not in this case necessarily. It could, and some things you choose, like, oh, I live in Long Island and it's real expensive here, and my, whatever, that could stand to antagonize the financial aid office who perhaps read the special circumstances of an applicant just before yours who has cancer, for example. You don't want to be measured up like that. It could really leave a bad taste, and it unfortunately could have a negative result for you.
Yeah, so I guess the way I want to sort of add to that, and I agree with everything you said, is that so much of this process is about your tone and the way you approach the financial aid office. And when I say this process, I mean about the appeal process. So I already spoke a little bit about appeals. I think that's a good segue for me to sort of round out that discussion by describing the appeal letter. Pearl, you can tune me out. Like, I have to tell you that, but you can tune me out and try to get some more of these chat questions.
Yes.
The one that I wanted to make sure you saw was, there are actually two. Cheryl wanted to know if you're a 2017 grad, will we sign up now and complete the FAFSA next year? And my advice is, yeah, because we are not going to have a lower price ever for this, and I'm not sure we'll run this again next year. I mean, we have no idea. So it's going to be based on this results. So that we have plenty of 2017 kids who have signed up for this. That was one question. And a lot of people were asking, how do people answer the trivia question before it was asked? That's your internet speed. It's not. There was no one's psychic here. We didn't fix it. Trust me. So you get in there, Pearl, and I see Kara has a good question. Gina about the IRS, DRT, and taxes. Okay, you'll handle this.
Yep.
Okay. So let me speak a little bit about the structure of an appeal letter, and bear in mind my comments before that you want to always come across as on their side of the table and not some overbearing, entitled, outraged type of parent. So I realize, again, I said this a few times, there are people in different parts of the country on this call where we are. Long Islanders have this is going to be shocking to some of you, but Long Islanders have a reputation as being a little pushy. Yes, Pearl's from Long Island. I'm not, so I feel like I have license to say that. So the point is that you don't want to come across that way in an appeal letter, because you're just going to turn the financial aid office off the way Pearl just said. So here's how I structure my appeal letters, and let's see, I will teach a class on this later. But again, the recording of, if you don't catch everything when you take notes, the recording is going to be available for a few days after we wrap up tonight. And here's how the appeal letter goes. Dear, whomever, and make sure you submit the appeal letter to the actual person, if you know the name of the person who issued you the financial aid offer. So, dear Dr. Johnson, thank you very much for your very generous financial aid offer. This is assuming you received a financial aid offer. If you didn't and you're appealing, I would say something like, thank you very much for considering my financial aid application. And then I would say my child name, Billy Ray, is very, very excited about attending such and such school, which has been his first choice college since he became serious about this college process. We think he's going to be a great credit to the school because of his amazing community service and his leadership role. Whatever you have to say, don't go on for 2 paragraphs, maybe 2 sentences. However, I was crunching the numbers, and I have become increasingly nervous and unsure of my ability to be able to send Billy Ray to his top choice college. And we did receive other offers from other colleges that we are being forced to consider only for financial reasons. Of course, if this is not true, don't say that, right? Sorry, getting back in character. So if there's any, and I'm sorry, copies attached. That's very important. If you have the other offers, I would send them. If there's any way at all that you could possibly meet or even exceed these other offers, Billy Ray is 100% committed to attending such and such university. Please contact me with any questions, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, sincerely. And that's really it in a nutshell. But here's where the magic is. If there is, some magic involved, it's telling them that this is the first choice college. That's very important. So do that in good faith. Don't tell 5 colleges that you're my number one choice, because it's a small community. You never know if word's going to get around. It could happen. I've seen stranger things. The second thing is that you should send this not only to financial aid, but also to the admissions office. And I remember I had a client 2 years ago who told me, wow, that's brilliant. I never would have thought of that. And I was really smug because she went to Yale and I went to Wesleyan, where half the class was from, because they were rejected by Yale. So I had a 38-second moment in the sun. But what happened with her was that her son got into Harvard and Yale. And Yale gave 0 and Harvard gave like $32-something thousand. And what was even more strange was that she was an alum and her husband was an alum. And her husband taught a class. He was an adjunct professor at Yale. So it was really bizarre. She couldn't figure out why 2 schools who ostensibly look at the same CSS profile, the same financial aid forms, would give such different financial aid awards. Because that's the thing about this process. It can be, a school can say it's need-based, but need is in the eye of the beholder. So they both looked at the same stuff, but came back with widely divergent offers. So what ended up happening was we showed Yale Harvard's offer, and Yale came up from 0 to $40,000. It was nuts. That's not typical. But my point is that that's how you structure an appeal. It really helps if you have other offers. If you don't, then you rely on whatever you have. I wanted to call some facts to your attention that you may not be aware of because they weren't disclosed on my financial aid forms. Then you go into the expenses or the drop in income or whatever else is going on. That's where you put it in there. You have to tell them that it's new information that they need to be aware of in order to consider your financial aid application fairly. All right. So, Pearl, any other things here? Jamie said goodnight. Thank you. God, what a great guy. It was nice of him to come on here. Charlie, on your website, does the information get sent to you and then we send it back to you? Pearl, did you answer that one?
No.
Okay. So what happens is, Charlie, you sign up and then you actually receive a questionnaire from us. We haven't made that electronic yet, but it's a PDF. And then you send that back to us either by mail, fax, or you can email it along with a copy of your tax return. So it's manual. It's not an automated process, except Pearl then manually inputs everything, and then you'll log in with her in our secure site. It's a very, very cool system, actually, very efficient. And she prepares both forms at once too, so you don't have to go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Let's see, Pearl, did you answer any questions? Did you get Roxanne's question about income on the FAFSA? Do you include money contribute to a 401k?
I do believe I answered that.
Okay. So the answer is they ask you about that, yes.
Yes, they ask you about it contributions to your 401k will appear on both the CSS and the FAFSA, and it will in fact get added back into your income. In fact, I've had clients ask, oh, well, should I help myself out by adding more to my retirement income in contributions this year? And then I said, well, do not bother because it is going to be included in your overall income. They add it back. So while they do ask about the contributions made to your retirement assets, they being the schools that require the FAFSA only are not asking about what you have in retirement accounts in total. It's not treated as an asset on the FAFSA.
But it's also, so you got a little more information there, but it's a line item. It says it asks you to include money contribute to a 401k. That was Roxanne's question. That was a great question. Steve Patosa, how do I know that the school requires FAFSA or CSS? So you look at the school. You know what? I wonder if I can do that right. Let me do that right now. I'm going to share my screen and attempt to show you how to look that up yourself, because it's there we go. It's not easy. So you can see my screen, right? Or I'll take it from your silence if the answer is yes.
Yes.
So I'm going to go, let's say I always pick on Syracuse for some reason. I'm going to look at Syracuse University because a lot of kids apply there. I'm going to click on the site, and I'm going to try to find their financial aid information. Now, full disclosure, I've done this before, but it's not so easy. So if you were to look up here, or for a link for financial aid, this is very typical of a lot of schools. You wouldn't see it. So I'm guessing I'm going to go into admissions, and I want to go to, now clicking again, it's my third click to undergraduate admissions, and they're asking, who are you, first year students, academics, cost and aid. I think you need to, well, here's the answer, CSS profile and FAFSA. But there's nothing very clear in terms of walking you through the process. So I guess what I would do is click on the financial aid office, and then I'd click on how to apply. And ooh, that guy's got my earbuds. That's what we cool kids use. Select the link below to learn about the application process. And then they go through all this type of stuff. And right here, first you have to file a FAFSA. Then you may also choose to apply for a Syracuse University grant. And you'll need to file the CSS financial aid profile to do so. Please be sure to meet the financial aid filing deadlines. And then you go into here. And I've already lost track of all the clicks I've done, but now you can see the filing dates. So that's it in a nutshell. That's how you do it, and you have to do that for every school that you apply to. So there isn't that, you can also look on the College Board database, College Board website, collegeboard.org, but we have seen some mistakes there before, so I'm not sure I would rely on that. I think there's no shortcut. I think you have to look at each college's deadlines. And Pearl and I kind of know some of them off the top of our heads, but we don't rely on that because they could change. Sometimes schools go from taking the FAFSA and the profile to only the FAFSA. Sometimes they'd always historically required the FAFSA, and then they go to the CSS profile also. So things change all the time. The FAFSA actually changed. The new FAFSA for class 2017 is available in October. And heretofore, it's been available only in January for 2016 and older kids. So, Pearl, you got anything else you want to add here? We're still getting so many questions. I don't want to leave anyone hanging here. You're saying hi to Jody. Guess you know her. Paula, did you answer this question? Is there any hope for a top student to qualify for aid with household income over $400,000? Even at that level, it's impossible to afford some of the top private schools. The answer to that is it is possible, but with income at that level, most likely you need to have more than one child in school at the same time, probably 3 kids in school at the same time, which is probably not the case, but we do have clients with quintuplets, and we have several twins and triplets as clients. So your best bet is merit money. There's actually, believe it or not, there's actually more merit-based money out there than need-based money. We've been focusing on need-based money for this presentation, but there's actually more merit-based money. So that's going to be tough, but you can certainly qualify for loans. We have clients who choose to take loans even though their income is maybe double that amount, and they do so just so they have a little bit of breathing room to be able to not feel crushed in paying those bills, especially if you're paying $60,000, $70,000 a year and you have more than one kid in school. So you should still file. Pearl, where are you here? You got anything to add? Well, I'm just searching through chat. Talk to me.
I'm perusing these fabulous questions.
How would you handle an appeal? This is from Jack.
Joint custody.
Oh. All right, you go. Go ahead.
Okay, how would you handle joint custody? Okay, well, it's important to understand that whatever your arrangement is in A, divorce, and B, who claims who on a tax return is irrespective for these financial aid forms. The threshold question is which parent does the student spend 51% or more time with? That is the parent's information you would use, and not the rest. That being said, and not the other parent. What?
I love the hiccuping.
I'm sorry. This is the human touch, folks. Okay? Got some hiccups. What can I say? But I'm also giving you some good information. So anyway, the if you are the parent who spends more than 50 or 51% or more time, then you are the only parent's information who would go on the FAFSA and the CSS profile. That being said, some schools who require the CSS profile also require an additional form called the non-custodial parent profile, which is like a mirror image of the CSS profile, but only the non-custodial parent's information is used on that, and that school that requires both the custodial parent and the non-custodial parent's information will make an evaluation on the award based on both parents' information. That's just the way it is.
Yeah. I was just, as you were hiccuping, I was thinking about all those old Saturday Night Live, like Julie Child skits, you know?
I'm not going to cut my hand off and have blood oozing off. There's only so much I'm willing to do for the entertainment factor on this show.
Well,
it is free, after all. You're going to get some hiccuping.
You are a giver. Okay. So let me go through some hiccuping, no extra charge. A couple other questions here, which I try to answer. I did not get, let's see here. I didn't get to all of these. So Pearl, if you got to some of these, just stop me. Kara, don't most public schools require FAFSA only, and private schools both FAFSA and CSS? That's what I've seen so far. It tends to be that way. It's not.
But there are exceptions. There are some very good state schools, UNC, University of Michigan, UVA. These schools are public schools that require the CSS profile also.
Right. So the bottom line is still you have to check, but Kara, you're generally right. Aileen, I'm still confused about the custodial account. Should we empty it or decrease it tomorrow? I will have 2 kids in college, getting really stressed out and nervous. So, again, I don't mean to sound like a weasel attorney, a recovering attorney, but we can't give advice like that. That is advice we give clients. Generally speaking, what I can say is money in your child's name penalizes you so much more severely than if it were in your own name. You can draw your own conclusions, or you can talk to us. So, sorry to dodge that, but I think you can read between the lines there. Russell asked, at what income can you still qualify for subsidized loans? There's no ceiling on that. Same answer. Jack, how would an appeal of CSS award be handled by you when the student is in their 2nd year of going to that college? College gives no merit-based money. What leverage can you use? So 2 things. The only 2 things that I think could work, and even these are long shots, but the first is if you were to apply to transfer and get some other financial aid offer or merit-based offers from other schools and show them to your current school, that would probably be the best thing. Most kids won't do that if they don't feel like it, but that really would be the best thing. The second thing might be if you had some sort of change in circumstances, and that's not really a merit thing, it's a need-based thing, but if any new developments that adversely impact your ability to pay for college, that's what I would tell them about. Paula says, thank you. You're welcome, and thanks for saying that. Lisa, I completed CSS profile in November for an early action school. Do I need to do it all over from scratch, or can I just hit the submit button and send to the rest of the schools now? Pearl.
You cannot actually change your once and already submitted CSS profile, with the exception of being able to add additional schools to it. And just keep in mind that ultimately whatever school receives the CSS profiles also going to receive your FAFSA, and they read the 2 forms in conjunction with one another, with the mindset that one was submitted at a time where estimates only could be given, and then ultimately they get the actual information. But the gist is, no, a lot of times people just submit the CSS profile to a school they've applied to, early action or early decision, and then by the time December, January rolls around, they realize they have other schools they wish to receive it. No problem. You just add those schools to the profile, just like that, and it submits the already completed CSS profile that you had initially turned in. It just adds the additional schools.
Okay. Richard asked, the only aid offered to my son was subsidized and unsubsidized loans. We didn't take the loans, and next year received nothing. If we don't take the loans, does that mean no aid offered ever again, even if the college 529 fund is now depleted? So the answer is that's not what it means. But not taking the loans will indicate, similarly to how Pearl was judging the student for not wanting to work, it indicates that you don't really need the money. So if you say in year one, I don't need the money, and then year two, you're saying, by the way, I need the money, but nothing else has changed.
Which may be true. Well,
yeah, that could be true, right? Then that's one of the factors. But the second thing is, you know, as things change, like funds being depleted, your circumstances and your eligibility change too, which is why you refile the financial aid forms every year. So it doesn't necessarily mean that you're out of luck, but you know, Pearl said this earlier also, that you are that first year that you file, you're setting precedent. That's the most important year. So it's harder, not impossible, but harder to kind of undo things unless you made some big mistake in the first year where things drastically change. And we've seen numerous examples of both each and every year this year already. People's circumstances change. They get laid off from jobs, or they, you know, fall ill or something like that. So it's not over till it's over, but it's just harder. I think we have time for a few more questions. Let me just go through that offer one more time, just because I feel that one thing I want to say is, I know we've given you a lot of great information, and we're giving you copies of the slides. Those are actually on the Financial Aid Warrior site at the bottom. And what I want to say, though, is that it's one thing to get the information. It's another thing to implement it. And it's almost like, I was just thinking about different ways to express this, but it's almost like you, let's say you were in high school, and a teacher walked in to you in the classroom the first day and dumps a huge textbook on your desk, and then says, "Here's all the information. Goodbye. I'll see you for finals in June." And you're like, "What?" And then you go to your next class, and the same thing happens. And your third class, the same thing happens. Having all this information, like we're dumping on you, this is a virtual textbook. It's great, and I hope you implement it. But not everyone, let's face it, not everyone is going to implement this. So if you want our help, you know, again, you'll probably have forgotten half of this by tomorrow, and maybe all of it, or even that you're even on this webinar, you know, 10 days. If you want our help, now is the time to click on that orange button or go to financialaidwarrior.com and take us up on this offer. It really is the lowest price that you're ever going to see, and it's a pittance compared to the value of having someone like Pearl, and to some extent me, distracting her, in your corner, because one mistake, as we talked about this before, we've demonstrated, we've proved to you, one mistake can mean a $10,000, a $12,000 difference repeated year after year after year. If you pay us, you know, a very small investment, it's like nothing compared to the value monetarily, then not only are you going to improve your chances of getting a huge award, but also you're going to have peace of mind, and you're not going to stress out. You're going to free up some time, and you're going to feel like you're doing all you can for your kids. I mean, you spend all sorts of other money that with dubious returns on investment, like SAT tutoring or enrichment activities or things like that. What we're asking for in order just to fill out the financial aid forms is like a joke. It's like a cup of coffee compared to some of the other money that people blow. So that's we really know that we do a great job. Our clients say that we do a great job, and we'd love you to check us out and take us up on our offer. That's really all I wanted to say about that. Pearl, anything else you want to add before we wrap up here?
Nope. Just, did you include the site where everyone can see it if they just want to explore this?
I'm going to put it in chat, I guess. It's financialaidwarrior.com. It should be on the right side of the screen. I don't know if you can see it, but there should be an offer there with a little logo and an orange button that says, yes, I'm in. And just take us up on it. We'd love to have you. On behalf of Pearl, we'd love to have you as clients. So I'm just going to take one more quick buzz through chat. Oh, look, we both put up the same website. That's so cute when we do the same things. You know, something that Pearl does to me a lot is like when we're going out, I'll be ready first, of course, and I'll be waiting downstairs, and then she'll come down in like the same outfit. And I feel like this is the same thing. I love when you do that, honey.
I really look up to you.
Yeah. Then I either make her change or I change because I'm not. All right, a couple more questions here. FAFSA FAFSA using estimated income, and it's updated after tax return is completed. If we hire you, do you help us update the FAFSA? Yeah, of course, sure. It's all in. There's no there's no additional fees. It's all in. Thank you for that question, Karen. If a SUNY school awarded money, can we request more? Well, listen, you can, of course. Again, it helps if you have some sort of argument, right? I mean, anyone can just say, hey, I'd like some more money. Well, why? Well, I just want some more money. Even if that's true, you would hopefully come up with something a little more creative and compelling than that. That being said, if you live in the state of New York and you're applying to a SUNY and you get in, the prices are already very, very low. So some people do get merit money from SUNYs, a couple $1,000s, which helps. Those are more easily negotiated than need-based money, but it's much easier from a private school for sure that has a huge endowment. I think we are going to sign off. Dan, thank you. Appreciate your comments. Kara, great presentation. Forward email to a friend, and she went to see Star Wars instead. I dragged Pearl to see Star Wars. I think I would have rather seen that, but Pearl maybe not so much.
It was a wonderful film. It was wonderful.
Yeah, I really seriously, I practically dragged her to see that.
You did.
Yeah, nothing.
No practically about it.
3-pay offer, Gina. Your 3-pay offer adds up to $1,200, but the total is $1,099. Yes, that is right, because we charge an extra $100 to do the 3-pay because people's credit cards go bad and things like that. We don't want to charge, we don't want to chase people around. So it's $101 more for the payment plan. You're right. Okay, so Karen says, thank you. You're a great team. Appreciate your time and effort. I think that is a perfect time to wrap up this this presentation. Pearl, what do you think?
I would agree. I would agree. Any last, how do people get in touch with us? How do people reach out to us? Just so they don't feel we go off into the abyss of cyberspace. One more time, Andy.
Okay, give us, Pearl, why don't you put in chat our phone number and the website one more time for Financial Aid Warrior. And what I'm going to do is, it's one of these things where you have to be careful what you wish for. When people signed up, I said, hey, do me a favor, give me your burning question. I'll try to answer on the webinar. We answered a lot of them, but we had more than 410 people register for this presentation. So we couldn't get through all of them. What I am going to do is I'm going to take a look at all those over the next day or so, and I'm going to try to send those out by email. So that is one thing to look out for. Also, we have to get out the winner's prize for the raffle. We have to go through chat on that. I'll make that announcement too. And the slide deck is on financialaidwarrior.com. Also, you can check that out over there. What else? Am I forgetting anything? I don't think so. If you have any questions, just call us and we can set up time. We're slammed right now, so if it takes a couple of days for us to set something up with you, please understand that. But other than that, it was great. Thanks for spending all this time with us. And on behalf of Pearl, this is Andy Lockwood and Pearl Lockwood of Lockwood College Consulting signing off for the big broadcast on the financial aid mistakes. Thanks a lot for watching, and bye-bye.
Bye.